Okay, so the countdown has begun right now on the channel. It's about 30. It's about a 30 or 40 second delay from what we say and what appears on YouTube. Yeah, so I have, yeah, we're muted. It's just the music on the. Really, because I'm too excited. Going live at 15 minutes. There you go. We're muted, but you can't hear us, right? I mean, on the stream. Someone just posted they can hear you, but I've muted it. No, they can't hear us. Oh, nice. I don't think so. I've muted the feed, so I doubt it. Or maybe just at the beginning they caught like a word or two. Sorry, we weren't muted. You guys got a sneak preview. We're going to be starting on that. Hang in there. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Paratalk. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Welcome
Hello.
to. We're almost here. Welcome to a very special episode of Paratalk. This week we're going to be talking to. Well, I think you know who we're going to be talking to. We're going to be talking.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be bringing him on in just a second. Let me introduce the rest of the gang. Let's shoot over and say hello to Reeves Cook. Hello, Reeves.
Hello, Gareth. Back again.
Excited?
Yes, I am. I am actually. There's going to be lots to talk about tonight.
Lots and lots to talk about, and some very strange phenomena we're going to get into. We're going to get into some of the amazing video content by the one and only Shrouded Hand. So without further ado, let's bring Shrouded Hand in, or as you may or may not know him, Tom. Hello, Tom.
Hello.
Great to have you
Hello,
on the
everybody.
show. It's so totally great to have you on the show, Tom. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. We reached out to you last week on a whim. Let's get him on the show. Let's see what he says. Hope fingers crossed. And luckily for us, you came back and you said yes. So it's wonderful to have you on the show. Both Reeves and myself are big fans of your YouTube channel. Every time you get a new video out, we're all over it. It's great fun. And I know Reeves is a special big fan. Isn't that right, Reeves?
Oh yes. I don't know. I just I find Tom's videos to be extra spooky, and I do like the fact that he you go out and you make your I think it was the telephone to the dead out of odd boxes and stuff. So that's extra spooky. Very ingenious. Not that I don't think I'd have the guts to do some of that stuff.
Right. Well, I don't know. I just think, I better just do it for the content. I didn't really think of the consequences. Possibly I've haunted my house from doing all these experiments and things.
I was going to say, was there consequences? Because some of that stuff is all right. It kind of looks a bit scary, and was there anything after that came around?
Well, I noticed some like strange noises and things in my house, but I wasn't 100% sure if it was from doing that telephone thing, because I wasn't sure if like the what's it called, the haunted telephone or the experiment.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just an internet meme. I don't know if that has any origins in like any history, or whether it's just something someone's made up on the internet. So I tried it out, but I'd say for like the following few months after doing that, I did notice some strange noises in my house. Like I think I did a video about it about a year ago.
Yeah.
I heard some like, it was like someone was walking around in my hallway downstairs while I was up watching the TV, and or like I'd hear a noise sort of by the front door, and I'd think it was someone trying to get in the front door, and I can like see my front door out the window by from where I'm sitting. So I'd jump up and look out the window to see who was there, and there'd be no one there, and I'd still hear this noise. So I'd go out into the hallway, nothing there. So I don't know, maybe it was, or maybe it was just
that's creepy.
A coincidence. I don't know.
I don't know. I live in a quite old house, 18th century, and it's sometimes I think I hear and I think I see things out the corner of my eye. I told a story once that when I first moved in here many years ago, I was unpacking and I don't have a cat, and I thought I saw a cat in my hallway run past me. But I think that it's definitely it's definitely gives food for thought when you play around with things like that. And even if it's just an internet thing and it's a meme, it's just, I think that with the paranormal, you've got to be careful, because you can sometimes trick yourself into believing something or putting something, giving it sort of a real meaning.
Yeah, and cats is an interesting one, because I think that's what a lot of people see it as apparitions, as cats. It's either humanoids or a lot. Sorry, I'm fluffing my words. I hear a lot of reports of people seeing cats, or feeling like they'll be lying in bed and they'll feel a cat jump up on the bed.
Yes, I've experienced
like that. I remember
Matthew on the show a few weeks ago mentioned that he had like a haunted cat experience where he felt like a cat jumped on his chest while he was asleep, but there was nothing there.
No.
So maybe so.
I had a similar experience when I was a kid. I went over to stay with my grandma, who lives in Denmark, and I was sleeping in this upstairs room, and I remember waking up in the night and seeing a cat sat on the little stand next to the bed. And my grandma didn't have a cat at the time. So, I woke up in the morning and I was like, there was a cat by the bed, and they were like, no, impossible, there's no cat. So yeah, I don't know. I've heard quite a lot of reports of people seeing cats that shouldn't be there, or feeling cats that shouldn't be there.
Let me ask you a question, Tom. Now, obviously, due to your channel, you're very very interested and fascinated by the paranormal and the strange, the weird, the dark. What cultivated this kind of interest? What brought you into it? What was the spark that lit the fire that got you into these kind of strange topics?
I'm not 100% sure. I remember when I was a kid, I was just obsessed with ghosts, ghost stories. It might have been because my parents kind of disapproved of that kind of thing. They're very religious, and they wouldn't let me, consume anything that was too scary or anything like that, any ghost stories. But also, I think my house was haunted when I was a kid. I don't know what it could have just been my imagination, but when I think back, there's quite a lot of strange things that happened that could have sort of sparked that interest in me. So I'm not sure. Maybe I was always interested in it from the beginning, and then I just happened to being a haunted house, but
So you think your
I
house
don't
was
know.
haunted? Did you ever bring this up to your parents, or if you have any siblings, or ask anyone living in the house? Do you think something might be going on here, something strange, or?
Yeah, well, I would tell my parents if I'd seen something strange, and they'd always just say no. You know, nothing. There's nothing
Nothing
there.
there.
It's just your imagination. Like classically, my brother's actually in the chat there, so I don't know whether he could say whether I've ever told him about anything. But I can't remember whether I brought it up much. But yeah, I used to. It was mostly just a feeling in the house. There was like one room at the end of the house that was always just a bit creepy, and like we'd keep all like the toys in there. It was like the playroom, and I'd go in there, and you just get like a cold feeling. And as I was like, if I was walking away from the room, it'd get like a feeling, in the back of your neck where you had to like get away quick. And I'd always like run up the hallway away from the room. So
I know exactly what you mean. You'd feel like you weren't welcome in the room. You'd go in
yeah,
there. There's as if there's kind of an energy around you that you just want to leave. You just want to get away. You don't want to stay there.
yeah. I can remember like a couple of strange things happening in that room. Like I remember one time I was in there on my own, and there was some boxes on top of a cupboard, and I don't know if I was playing underneath the cupboard, but I remember looking up and seeing one of the boxes like go forward. It didn't fall off the top of the cupboard, but it kind of like jolted forward, and there was nothing there to touch it or to move it. It was just as if something was behind it pushing it, but the cupboard was up against the wall, so there couldn't have been anything behind it. I remember telling my parents about that, and they said it was just a bird, which didn't make any sense. There was no way a bird would have been in,
Yeah.
but that's what they told me. So I remember one time seeing a figure walk down the hallway, and I thought it was my dad, and I followed behind, saying like shouting for my dad because I wanted to ask him something, I suppose. And he walked down the hallway, ignoring me, into this room, slammed the door behind him. And I walked in after and opened the door. There was nobody in there. So, and I found my dad late, like, I walked up and found my dad in a different room of the house. So, whether
Yeah,
it was like a doppelganger or what, I don't know.
I think when you're saying that you think your house was haunted, I think if you're experiencing things like that,
Yeah.
it sounds like it was. It doesn't sound like on the off chance it might sound. It sounds like it really really was haunted.
I think
Yeah, I suppose so.
I think us being children as well, when you're younger, I think you're more susceptible, I think, to paranormal goings on and anything that we as adults would maybe sort of scoff away and think, no, that didn't happen. I think that when you're children, I mean, I remember living in a house, and I used to wake up at night, and I was sure that I could see this figure in the corner of my room, and it was no shape. There was just a shrouded figure, no form. It was just in the corner of my room, and I used to sleep with my curtains open because I used to prefer the light to come in and light my room, and you could see the silhouette of this figure, I suppose you could call it, and I was terrified. I couldn't move. My parents, I couldn't knock on the wall for my parents or anything. I was just absolutely petrified, and this went on for quite a long time. And my mum ended up taking me to the doctors because she thought I was having some sort of mental problems, and I this went on for maybe a year, and then all of a sudden it kind of just stopped. I didn't see a set figure anymore, didn't have any experiences in my room anymore, and it was just I went on with my life and played records and rode my bike and all the other things you do when you're a little kid. But I definitely did experience something, but I don't know exactly what it might have been or how it may have manifested in whatever way, because I didn't really have any. The only trauma I really had around that age was I had an operation. My appendix, I had an appendix operation, and I also recovery and stuff. So they said maybe that was it, but I don't know. It just definitely, I think children are, you say the children with their sort of invisible friends, there's possibility there that children are maybe not making it up. They are maybe seeing someone, but I don't know about you, but my childhood memories, it's very hard for me to sort of go back now and think with any accuracy what I actually experienced, just vague memories.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why I was saying I think it was haunted, or it might have been haunted, because you remember your memories, don't you? You don't remember the exact event. You remember your last memory of the event, or something like that. I've heard.
Yeah.
Like each time you remember something, you're remembering the last time you remembered it, or something like that. I'm sure I've heard that that's how memory works. So
Memories
I
change
think
over time too, though, right? Over time, they kind of they morph into different things. They're not as accurate as what you might think they are.
So I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure a lot of the memory of the figure walking down the hallway. I can't think of any way. Like, I can remember that very clearly, and I remember like talking to my parents about it at the time and stuff like that. So I don't know how that memory would have been.
Well, what's interesting there is when you say about you saw a figure walk down your hallway. What is interesting there is that it slammed the door behind it.
Yeah.
So you've got a, let's just say that you witnessed some form of an apparition. That apparition is interacting with, and this obviously, this is something that is not, a rare occurrence that's happened before. There was a case years ago where an individual in another country, not in England, another country, he was driving down a certain haunted stretch of a road, and he could see someone in the back of his car, and he went to the police and reported it, and the police followed him out, and he said, you follow me down this stretch of road, there's a person getting into the back of my car, like a hitchhiker, and the police officer witnessed the door of the vehicle in front open and close, but didn't see anybody get into the car. So there's a possibility that something possible is going on there, but as you say, our memories are so vague when we're little. It's hard to sort of piece it all together,
Yeah.
It's strange because you say about with kids. Now, myself growing up, I have lots of memories of strange occurrences, and when I became an adult, I thought, well, maybe all kids have these kinds of memories and things. So when I had my own kids, I paid special attention to what they were experiencing, and I would ask them every morning when they were really young. I would say, did you dream last night? And if you did, what happened? What was in the dream? And I was always expecting them to say, yeah, there was a figure by the door, or I saw a shadow, and there was nothing. Nothing at all. Zero. No, just regular, normal things. So my whole theory about, well, all kids go through this is kind of blown out of the water. No, it's not all kids. It's just some kids. I guess us three on the show, right? We all experience stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's not,
we're just not normal.
All kids,
Yeah. We're just unusually not normal.
Yeah. I guess.
I suppose you only see it if there's something there to see, though. I mean, all kids might have the ability, but there might not be anything for them to experience in the first place.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it's like if you somebody tells you that they went to a haunted house and it was crazy and tables were moving and there was knocks and voices and whatever, and you go there and you don't have nothing. You experience nothing, and it's whether, well, does that mean that house isn't haunted, or does that mean that you're not tuned in to those certain frequencies that other person is? Does that mean the person's more sensitive and you're not? Even though if you've got an interest in it, it doesn't matter. You're not open enough to it. There's so many things. I think that like that with personal experiences, I think that it plays a lot onto the person themselves at what they experience and how they experience it. I mean, I could have an experience in a haunted castle, and you could go into the haunted castle and have a completely different experience, or have nothing.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys about when you go into a building, regardless of what the building is. Do you get a feeling of the energy of the place? Can you tell if it's off, if it's not right, if you can sense there's some kind of presence? Has that happened to any of you, Tom, Reeves?
Sometimes I think, I don't know, I always try and think of like a more not natural explanation first. I've heard a lot about there's certain resonances in buildings that can kind of give you an eerie feeling. I've read up a lot about stuff like that, so I like to keep an open mind, but I'm never 100% sure. I don't know if I'm too sensitive to those sort of things these days anyway,
Because you mentioned when you were a kid the toy room you had, and when you would go in, you'd have that feeling. Have you
Yeah.
ever gone into another building, maybe a friend's house, or I don't know, another, and got a feeling that's very similar to that?
I can't remember any within the last, say, 10 years. The last time I can remember feeling something like that was my ex-girlfriend. This was probably about 20, 19, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And her house just had that feeling. And I'd have strange nightmares when I was in there of like a figure coming into the room where we were sleeping. It was almost like I was awake, but I was
Yeah.
dreaming, and I always got an eerie feeling in that room. But I don't know whether in the years since then I've maybe lost a bit of sensitivity to that, or maybe I'm just too busy these days with being an adult to notice. I don't know.
Busy being an adult. I like that.
Yeah. I
um,
think I think when you get older, you kind of you get too bogged down with
yeah, yeah,
the ins and out of life to really,
yeah.
you know.
No, I agree. It's sad but true, but it is. I saw a T-shirt once that said, "The dumbest thing I've ever done is being an adult."
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought that was a great one.
it's really true.
But yeah, I know what you mean. There's been many occasions when I've gone into another location, whether it be someone's house or a building, and you get that feeling. A few years ago, my wife's a school teacher, and many years ago she was in a specific school. I'm not going to say where. And during the summer, I would go and help her clean up her classroom and everything. And there was a room, like a storage room. It was a classroom, but it was full of old desks and books and things where the teachers would store things for the next year. And she would say, okay, carry this desk or carry this stack of books or whatever, and go put it in that classroom. And
Yeah.
whenever I would go into that classroom, carrying a big thing of books or something, and I'd go in there, and I'd get that feeling, that exact feeling that you described, Tom. That the feeling where there's like an energy in the room. The hairs on your arms would stick up.
Yeah.
You'd have a feeling like, get out, leave this room,
hmm
don't be here. And every time I would go in there, and I would do experiments. I'd walk to the door, and I'd step in, and I'd go in, and I'd see how far I could go in before the feeling engulfed me.
hmm
And on one or two occasions, when my wife was way on the other side of the building, I would actually go in there and start talking to the air, like, "Hello, I know you're here," and all this stuff, hoping to get some kind of response. I never did, but I know the feeling, and I've experienced it in houses too. When you go to visit a family member, and you walk into the house, you can feel it almost immediately. Have you ever run into anything like that, Reeves?
Oh yes. When I was younger, we used to go on trips to my parents used to take myself and my brother to trips to old castles, because obviously England's got a lot of castles, and some of them are, they've restored them, or they're open to the public, and you can go in and walk around. And I remember going into these castles and just having this feeling. I was only a little child, so it was more of it was more of a kind of an adventure, but that kind of stuck with me. And then in later years, as I got older, I studied history at school, and of course part of our history was to go to learn about the history of the country. And we would go to these other places, like I remember the one place that I did go that felt very strange was up the country was a workhouse which had been saved, and they opened it as a museum. And I walked around this with a class of maybe, I think, about 17 or 20 of my classmates that were doing the same lesson as I was doing.
Right.
And I remember walking around this workhouse, which was a massive place, huge it was, and they had all these like old style looms, and they had the small areas where the families would stay, like little concrete stone bays and stuff, and the seating where they'd eat their food. And it was very strange, because you could almost feel the sadness and the despair of this building, of kind of like the people that worked and died in this building because people did die in those buildings. They were killed, get caught up in the machinery, especially children, because they used to get the children to go under the looms and pick out all the bits of fluff, and they would get caught up in the machinery and the machinery would not stop because it was all driven by the water, by a big water wheel, and it was all, and because there was all belts and stuff going. It was, no health and safety in those days.
Yeah.
So I would feel it was a strange feeling. It was almost as if you were walking into a feeling a different time. And as I said before, like on our last episode, we did the live stream, we looked at the Talking Walls experiment, and how the potential of storing past sounds into stone, because stone, certain stone chemical makeup can act like a recorder. And I'm wondering that maybe we're a receiver as well. We're a kind of an organic receiver, that we can feel not so much the sound, but more of the feeling or the atmosphere of a building. Castles as well. The amount of horrible, crazy stuff that went on in castles was, to us now unfathomable.
Yeah.
But back then was normal. And you go into some of these castles, which are, you've got the original stuff from all those years ago, hundreds of years ago, and they've got the tables and all the stuff, and it's like all that could possibly be holding something that we can go in with at the right time and the right conditions, and we could be feeling that. So yeah, I have experienced it.
It's the stone tape theory, right? We talked about it on the last show where they charged the walls with electricity in that experiment, that pub in Wales, where they got all kinds of
Prince of Wales. Yeah,
we played some clips on the show of these sounds that they received.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing how much energy seems to be stored, but what we're talking about so far, though, is residual hauntings, right? Where the environment has somehow recorded some event, and under certain circumstances, it plays it back. But what about intelligent hauntings? You have any cases or stories on that, Tom?
I don't know, apart from the one that may have been haunting my house, being able to open doors and move boxes and things. That's probably the.
Was there ever a kind of some kind of form of communication though, or maybe just moving things was trying to get your attention?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the fact that when I say about when the box moved forward, it was just as I was looking up at this box, so it was as if it knew that I was looking at that place, and there was actually another time where I was about to go into the room, and the door handle started to shake as if someone was on the other side, and I assumed it was my brother or someone playing a prank, and I pulled the door open, and so it felt like, rather than just seeing a recording, it was something actually trying to either scare me or get trying to interact in some way. It felt much more like that. I don't know whether it was, but
did you ever? I mean, years later, you've moved out and you got your own place. You're doing your own thing. But did you ever talk to your parents after the fact and say, "Hey, when I was a little kid, do you remember these things and what was going on?" Because I can understand how, when you're a child and something weird is happening and you're a parent, you're gonna say, "Oh no, it was nothing. Don't worry about it. You're fine. It was the wind or whatever." You blow it off, so not to scare or upset the child. When in reality, you're thinking, "Oh shit, what the hell was that?" Whereas when you get older and you approach your parents and say, "Hey, do you remember this?" At that point, they might be far more open to talk about what may or may not be going on. Have you ever thought about reaching out to them and asking them that?
I think I have. I think I've brought it up maybe once or twice as I got older, and they were always just the same. Like, no, it's just your imagination. There was nothing there.
Yeah.
And I think they're just kind of quite opposed to talking about that kind of thing anyway. Anything to do with the supernatural. Well, actually, my dad recently told me about, because we were talking about cats earlier, he was one of the people who told me he felt a cat jump up on the bed when there was nothing there. So I was kind of surprised to hear him tell me that, because
Oh,
I didn't expect him to be interested in that
I
sort of
tell
thing.
you.
But anytime I talk about the house when I was a kid, they just say
They
no.
won't go there. I tell you what, though, a
Yeah.
story just popped into my head when you mentioned your dad. You made a video. I don't know. It must have been a while ago. About when you were a kid, you would go to the cinema with your dad, and
Oh
Yeah.
and
yes,
it
yes.
turned out the guy who was running the place was like some
Yeah.
maniac serial killer.
Uh-huh. I think Peter Moore was his name, I think, the guy. I always forget his name because he's one of these serial killers with a really sort of generic name that I always forget.
Yeah.
So I think it was Peter Moore. Yeah, he was cruising the local cottages and gay hookup spots and abducting men in his van
And
and
killing
murdering them.
them.
And yeah, he
But,
was just a normal guy when you spoke to him, you know.
But
so he just came over as just an everyday dude, and
Uh,
you had, and he didn't give off an air of like evil, evil
no.
geezer. It was just like
Well,
an.
in the video, I tell about the time where I went to the toilet
yes.
in the
Uh,
cinema and came out, and he was just standing there really
Oh, yeah,
menacingly.
that's right.
Jeez. I was
Yes.
just going to ask you
Well,
about that, man.
I mean, I was like on my own in this toilet, you know, and maybe he saw it as like his opportunity to like scare
Yeah.
someone. But and also obviously, if I went back and told my dad, he wouldn't believe me because he'd spend 5 minutes before the movie started chatting to this guy out in the lobby because he was the friendly cinema owner. So
Jeez.
What did your dad have to say about that when all the news came out? Was he shocked, or did he
I
kind
think
of?
so.
He
I
must
can't really
have.
remember, Yeah, I think he was. I think he must have been shocked.
Yeah.
I remember him saying like, "Oh, he seemed like such a nice guy," because I always used to
Well,
talk to
that's
him.
always the one, though, isn't it? You think about it. I mean, if you think about it, some of the nicest people that you meet can be actually some of the most evil people.
Well,
If
Yeah.
we look back in
yeah.
history to serial killers, and I just some of them come across as like, if you didn't know what they did, they come across as like, oh, that's a nice chap. I'd have a cup of tea with him,
Yeah, yeah,
and then the next minute he's wearing your face.
Well, they
Yeah.
always
You know?
they always say that though. When they catch some crazy maniac serial killer, and then they go and they interview his neighbors, and the neighbors
yeah.
are like, "Oh, he was always so nice. He would help me take out,
Yeah.
he'd help me take out the
Uh.
trash, and he helped me cut the lawn. He was such a sweet, nice boy." When he was murdering all these people and burying their bodies under the house and shit. It's insane. The last people you'd ever think of.
Yeah. Well, I suppose when you're truly evil, you kind of compensate for it in building up this illusion of being a nice person. You kind of overcompensate
Yeah,
and
yeah.
act even nicer than everyone else around you, I suppose.
That's
'cause-
actually a very interesting point, Tom. Because if you remember back years ago, I can't remember the guy's name, that he murdered those two young girls, and he tried to sort of hide it and burn their bodies and put them in a warehouse somewhere miles away. And his partner at the time was covering for him. It's all over the news, and he was like the main guy saying, "Oh, I can help. I'd like to be involved with the search. I can help you guys." And that's what got him
And he was
caught
the
because
guy.
Huntley, was it? Is that the guy?
what was his
Ian
name?
Huntley. Was it
Huntley,
Ian
that's
Huntley?
it. Huntley,
Yeah.
yeah, Huntley.
Mhm.
And that's what made the police suspicious, is because he was being so overly helpful,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
thought this guy's not. There's something going on with this geezer. And yeah, obviously things soon came to an end for
Yeah.
him, but yeah, I think that some of the nicest people you meet are potentially some of the most horrid. But
Yeah.
human nature and all that, isn't it?
That's kind of true though, and I don't know whether you two would agree with this or not. But when you meet someone for the first time, and they're immediately very, very nice, overly helpful. Oh, hey,
Yeah.
and they're all very happy to see, and you don't know this person. For me, I instantly get very, very suspicious.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here? What's up? Because people aren't like that. You only get to that kind of friendly level with someone after you've known them for, I don't know, months or weeks or months. When you first meet someone and they're that friendly, something is off. Something's not right.
I think that is goes back to what we were talking about, going into a building and feeling it's weirdness there. I think that we have it built into us that there's some sort of intuition that we have, that when we meet some other person, we're kind of like pre-reading them. We're unconsciously we're reading them through their the way they hold themselves, what they say, and I think that it's all done subconsciously. It's like it's like a safety thing where you're always watching when you meet somebody and you're not sure about them or anything. You're always kind of like asking the questions to get the answers so that you can find out if this person's on the level or not. And I think that's kind of built into us, and I think that helps when you go into buildings that are potentially haunted or they have paranormal disturbances, where you feel that that you get those triggers that are built into us, help us to understand the environment and whatever we're experiencing.
Let me let me start the ball rolling here. I want to start asking Tom about some of the stories he's covered, some of his videos that he's put together. One of the ones that really leaps out at me, and I think Reeves will agree, is the one where you go camping. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think out of your entire catalog of videos, this is one of the few videos where you're actually out filming yourself with your camera, as opposed to putting together all the images and the graphics and everything.
I've done one or two like that, but I did intend to do a lot more, but it started raining, and then we've been on lockdown, so. Yeah, it is one of the few that I've done.
I think it's a great video, but can you take us through step by step what the inception, why you chose to do that, and how you got from thinking about, hey, that would be a good idea, to actually putting the tent up and spending the night in this very spooky forest?
Well, I guess it started. I did a video about haunted forests and weird, creepy forests, and that gave me the idea to go and try and camp in some of these forests, because I was like, when I was researching it, I was looking for videos of people going into these forests and investigating them, and there wasn't too many, so I thought it might be a bit of an unexplored avenue to go down. So, and then I like crowdfunded a night vision camera to go and do it. Oh, actually, no. First of all, I found a tent in a bin behind this charity shop
Really?
that I volunteer at. Yeah, and that was kind of like, I thought, well, that's kind of like a message to, because I already had the idea in my head to go out camping, and then I randomly found this tent, and I was like, well, that's like
the universe is telling you something, Tom.
Yeah. So and then I did a crowdfunder for a night vision camera with the intention to go out and do all these camping videos, which I still haven't got around to, because of the weather and lockdown. But
life.
That was the first one I did, and how I ended up in Delamere Forest. I was already kind of quite aware of it because I was like just researching it. But then my wife had a business trip down to that area, and I had nothing to do that weekend. And I was like looking on the map. I was like, where she was staying. I was like, that's right next to Delamere Forest. So I was like, if I come with you, we just drop me off in the woods. And then she'll go off to a meeting and go stay in this hotel, nice cushy hotel all night, and I'll be camping out in the woods.
Well, wait, let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
I was gonna.
So when this is fascinating. So wait, so what does your wife think when you're like, she's like, yeah, you can stay in the no, drop me off in the woods.
Drop me in the woods.
I'm gonna go hang out in the woods for the. Is she cool with that, or is she like, what the hell is wrong with this guy?
Well, I don't know. She's lived with me for like 15 years. She knows what I'm like, so I don't think she's too surprised now if I say stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So, Delamere Woods, many stories. What were the stories that got you interested to make you go and do an overnight in that place out of any other?
The main one I heard, and I really wanted to find the exact location, but I couldn't, was that there were some campers murdered there in the 70s. And I wanted to go and camp in exactly the same spot, just because I thought it would be an interesting place, but I couldn't find the location. But yeah, that was it. That was the main story that I heard that made me want to go, because I thought if there's going to be any activity, it'll be camping in the exact place where some campers were killed. But there's so many stories about the place. I've heard there's like a dinosaur there, and like an apparition of a dinosaur.
Wait. A dinosaur? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I've never heard this. Tell me more.
Someone told me that there's apparently a story about I don't know if it's like I don't know what kind of dinosaur it is, a
Uh,
brontosaurus or something. But
have you heard about this, Reeves?
No, not a dinosaur apparition. That is very rare. I have a friend who, when she was a child, they were playing on a housing estate on old land that was being developed, and the house was half built, and she went into there was no doors on these buildings, and she went into one house, and she saw a man stood in the kitchen. Now, believe it or not, she saw a man stood in the kitchen, and to her, it looked like a Viking. And she ran out to tell her friends, and they came in, and there was no man in there. So,
Like
yes,
where
I mean,
he had the was it the
he,
hat with the
he
horn things
yeah,
on it and stuff?
had yep, he had like skin, like animal
Here's
skin
a thought though.
clothes.
That helmet with the horns, it might not have been a helmet.
But she said that's what she likened it to.
Yeah.
It would look like that looked like a Viking. Well,
Wow.
it could have been. I mean, it could have been anything, a young child. But she saw it and went to get her friends, and they came back, and there was nothing in there. But there's a lots of stories surrounding woods where people have had Clapham Woods and places like that.
Oh
There's there's
yeah.
lots of places where
What's that thing called, Reeves? The Hikante? I can't even say the word. The Friends of
Hecate.
Yeah. Are you familiar with that, Tom? That place?
Oh no, I thought you were talking about
The woods?
the goddess Hecate. It
Yeah,
was like,
well,
you know.
There's
there's a group of people which they were allegedly doing rituals in the woods,
in the
weren't
woods,
they?
yeah.
All right.
Well, there
Yeah.
was that researcher. I met him once when I was in London. What's his name? He made that video, Reeves, the one where he actually goes into the
yeah.
and does the research.
Yeah. He researched it all. He
Yeah.
researched the group, and he had an encounter in the woods with an individual
Mhm.
that said he was part of the group
Right.
that were worshipping the goddess and stuff.
Dogs would go missing in the woods.
Yep.
Yeah.
The number of phenomenon in the woods would be dogs would be found dead, and dogs would go missing. Also, a person went missing in the woods, and also people, walkers and runners that would go into the woods would experience a form of what you could call disorientation, where they would suddenly feel that they would lost their bearings, and they would get lost in the woods, and it would take them time to sort of, they would get nauseous, and they would get dizzy,
Right.
and then they would eventually find their way out. So there's lots of oddness around that area, but there's many woods in England and all over the world where people have been and they've experienced very odd experiences, from seeing strange things, to having what I would class as paranormal encounters, to even alien UFO style encounters, lights,
Yeah.
objects in the woods which they can't explain. It's not just one wood; it's all over the
Right,
place.
right.
But as you say, be honest with you, going into the woods and and camping on your own, that takes a bit of guts
That
anyway.
really does, man. I was just thinking that. Now, Tom, at any time when you were, your wife drops you off, you got your backpack on, and you start walking, you're walking through the woods. Is there any point in your head where you're like, what the hell am I doing?
the whole time I was there until I was up in the morning and out of there.
Really?
Now,
Yeah.
you actually had, if I remember correctly, you had a strange experience about 3 o'clock in the morning, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Where you had no memory of leaving your tent, but you did leave your tent.
Yeah. Well, it was only when I checked the trail cam that I'd set up that there was a video of me getting out of the tent and sort of looking around. And I mean, the trail cam only records for about 1 minute, and then it shuts off unless there's any more movement. So I only had like this clip. So I don't know whether I did anything strange. It would like shut off and it would come on for another minute. But each time I was just sort of wandering around. I wasn't doing anything weird. So I don't know whether I just wandered around and got back into the tent and went back to sleep. But
And
Do you think that
you have no
sleep?
sleepwalking or anything like that in the past?
yeah,
Or?
I do. I have in the past, when I was a lot younger, I used to sleepwalk a bit. So it could have been that, but maybe because I was sleeping in such an out of the usual location, maybe it triggered
Yeah.
something and brought back the sleepwalking. That's the
Yeah.
only thing I can think of. But
Um,
I still talk in my sleep a bit, but I don't think I've walked around in my sleep since I was, maybe 7 or 8, something like that. Yeah. So it was strange, but
I've had a fascination with sleepwalking because when I was younger, I used to sleepwalk, and
Yeah.
my mum used to find me all over the house, literally stood downstairs in the downstairs toilet talking to a towel, trying to make a sandwich asleep, all this sort of stuff. And they believe that it was brought on by, as many things, stress. But one of the
Yeah.
things is, you get stressed out. You're a young kid. You're going to school, and But one of the things that I did experience when I sleepwalked was I had a trigger which I knew. I didn't have any memory of my sleepwalk, but I remember that I would start to hear clocks ticking, and the ticking clock would get loud. Now I didn't have like a grandfather clock in my house or anything like that, and I would hear a clock ticking, and it would get louder and louder and louder, and then I would see only what I can imagine is colors, lots of colors, lots of like a rainbow colors, in a just a completely swirling pattern, in my mind's eye, not visually, but in my mind's eye. And it was almost as if I was, this was the kind of the precursor to me going for a midnight wander. But I'd have no memory of transversing the stairs or ending up in the bathroom trying to make a conversation with a towel or anything. I didn't have any memory of that. But obviously my mum would wake up because she was a light sleeper, and there's me clunking around the house,
Yeah.
But
it's interesting you said that, because it's quite similar. It's quite similar to my memory. Well, I used to sleepwalk, but I used to, as much as it was night terrors. Like I was kind of
yes.
I was awake, as in I could see and I could remember everything that was going on, but it was almost like it was a dream world around me. So I was up walking around the house, but I could see the things. But I also remember certain like strange noises. Like for me, it was before it came on fully, I would hear the sound of because my parents are Christian. They used to take me to church, and I'd hear the sound of like a choir singing, and it would build up louder in like a crescendo, and then it would just give me this strange feeling in my head. And then next minute, I know I'm like walking around the house and seeing all strange things. I remember seeing like at one point walking into my parents' bedrooms, and their heads were inflating and deflating like balloons, things like that. Just
wow.
When you were having these experiences, when you were kind of walking around the house, what color was everything?
Just normal color, I think. I mean, it was pretty dark at the time, so I can't really remember. It wasn't any particular color way.
No, because I've experienced something like that also, but everything was when it happened to me, everything appeared to be like, when there's a full moon and it's streaming in through the window, and everything in the room is kind of illuminated by moonlight, that kind of look.
Yeah.
When it happened to me, everything everywhere I looked like that.
Okay.
That kind
of kind of semi kind of illuminated.
Everything looked like moonlight, and I was just curious if you'd experienced anything like that. How about you, Reeves? No, or am I alone?
No.
It's just me.
No, just you. I just experienced that psychedelic rainbow color experience.
While you heard clocks ticking, maybe you were just tripping out on acid listening to Dark Side of the Moon.
I could have been, but honestly, it was like, I want to say a clock ticking. Not like a grandfather clock. If you go into like a clock tower and then the gears
Save
are going
the clock
clink,
tower.
clink, clink.
Sorry.
It was like that sound, and it was like really mechanical, and it was really sort of harsh. It was a real harsh sound, and it would start really quiet, and it would get louder and louder and louder, and it would get unbearable. And this would come on, multiple times a week. Yeah. And I had no memory of going sleepwalking, but that's the only memory I had. And I think that was the beginning of whatever it was that I was doing.
Let me ask Tom, how many videos do you have on your channel now? You must have hundreds, right? How many?
I don't know. Yeah, hundreds. I've not checked.
You've got a lot. was there ever a video that you created that you were putting together, and maybe you were far into the production, and a little voice in the back of your head was like, "Nah, maybe you shouldn't put this one out"?
I don't think so. They're usually the ones I put out because I think they'll get the best views.
Yeah. So
There's a few that I've done when I've got halfway through and I thought, no, it's boring, and I won't put it out. But if there's anything that's a bit too shocking, I'll think, nah, I'll put it out.
what's the one of the most shocking ones then, that where you were like, "Oh man, this is gonna be"?
I don't know. Probably the ones about like the horrible ways to die videos. There's one about like people being tortured to death and stuff like that. And I don't know. It's a bit grim researching it. And when I'm reading out the script, I'm like,
it's very.
This isn't. But at the same time, I'm thinking, this will be the most popular one because
It is. It's true
shocking.
though, man. Some of the topics. Sometimes I'll see one of your videos and I'm like, man, I almost don't want to click this because it sounds so. I mean, inevitably I click it and I watch it, but you kind of hover over the. Should I? Oh man, this is going to be nasty.
I mean, you got to comply with the guidelines anyway. So I mean, there's times where I find pictures that I think would be good to put in a video, and I'm like, no, I'm not putting that in. That'll get me a strike or banned or something. So, I mean, there is stuff I leave out, but I don't think I've ever like shied away from covering a topic. I've just been a bit more careful in what I show or how I word things, I suppose.
Now, you said there was one with a ritual. Can you tell us about that? The ritual you performed and how you found out about it?
Which one was it? I think I've done a couple like that.
Yeah, it's the one. I think it was the one where you made the box of mirrors, which kind of meant to conjure a spirit or a ghost.
Yeah.
And then you thought you got bored of it and just stuck it in the attic, and then things kind of transpired from there, didn't it?
Well, it's still in the attic. I was just clearing out the attic the other day and found it. But I don't know. Like I say, I was talking about the strange experiences with the sounds outside in the hallway and things like that. Whether any of these are linked to this box. It was called the Devil's Toy Box. I think the idea is you get 6 mirrors, square mirrors, and you tape them together so the mirrors are all facing inwards. And the idea is that a demon can get trapped inside the box somehow, because apparently spirits can use mirrors to enter the physical realm, according to some theories. And it gets confused because it's just a reflection on a reflection on a reflection, bouncing back and forth forever, and they just get stuck in there. And apparently, if you leave it for long enough, it'll get some kind of activity, and then it's a bad idea to open it back up again after that. So it's been set up in the attic for a couple of years now. And
did you open it? Tell us the truth. Be honest. Did you open
it?
No. Okay.
But I might do. I might do like a follow-up video, and so maybe open it. I don't know.
If you do open it, are you gonna like set up a camera on a tripod, pointing at the box? Then we see your hands coming in, and then opening the lid, and see what rushes out and engulfs you or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't imagine there'll be anything in there. I don't know.
You never know.
But yeah, we may as well set up the camera just in case.
It'd be great to watch, man. Just thinking about it would be awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think, Reese?
I suppose if it was that easy to capture paranormal activity, then everyone would do it, wouldn't
they?
That's
true. Good point.
What do I think? I think that we're dipping into the realms of Ouija board territory now, and I think that things like that, if you try them, I think that it's all down to what you believe. Do you believe it's going to work? And if do you believe it's going to haunt you? Do you believe? Then possibly, then it's like the poltergeist phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
You have something that's smashing your house up or being a pain in the ass. But what is it? Is it you? Is it something about you that's causing that, or is it something external? I think that with all these things, like the boxes and the radio, and you make the telephone and stuff, I think it's what you bring to it and what you put into it. If you believe it's going to work and you believe that something's going to come of it, then possibly you will also experience something.
Yeah.
It's like the experiment that they did to create a ghost. It was Gareth, what was
Seth experiment.
the Seth experiment,
Seth experiment, yeah.
where they had a group of people all came together. They created a history. They created a background to this individual.
Oh, yeah, I heard about this.
16th century, and they tried to contact him using table tipping. And what do you know? They got in contact with something.
It started
The
to
table
work,
was tipping, and it started to work, and it worked for quite a while. So, is it possible that we are able to, under the right circumstances, create something from nothing, purely by thought, by wishing it into existence? But as I say, it's so little known about it. But it's what my biggest worry would be to do videos like that. It's not so much myself, but it's doing it and then somebody writing me an angry email saying, "Hey, my ghost in my house is haunted now, and it's all your fault."
Well,
have you ever had that experience where someone's made a complaint to you because you've haunted their house?
That's a good point. Has anything like that happened?
I don't know if anyone's ever said they've been haunted, but I think I've had a lot of angry emails of people saying I shouldn't do it or I shouldn't show it on camera in case something like that happens. I don't think I've ever had anyone say they've had anything happen as a result of watching one of my videos, though. But I don't know, maybe that could happen. I'm not sure if.
Well, we can hope, right?
What you were saying about the belief bringing things into reality, that could go back to what we were talking about, how kids are more likely to experience something. That could be because
good point. Yeah.
Kids that don't have anything in their head to tell them that things aren't real, they're more likely to they experience something small and then they start to believe it's something, and then they give it more power, and maybe that's something why kids experience a lot of stuff.
They have no filter. They find it very difficult to distinguish between reality and fiction. That's why kids will believe they believe in Santa Claus. They just accept it blindly because they don't have the experience to differentiate between what's true and what's not.
Yeah.
So you can tell them anything. I mean, I always tell a story of my mother used to tell me. I remember when I was a kid, we had a radio in the kitchen, and I was always fascinated by how does the radio work. And my mother said there used to be a little man that lived in the radio, and he would talk, and the news tonight, and me, being this 4 or 5 year, I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm just totally buy it, believe it. It's so kids will believe anything,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I had a similar thought regarding television when I was younger. I used to think that there was actually a community of people that lived in the television, and they would dress up and act out the stuff that we would see on the TV. I don't know. That was it. Like, for example, when I was younger, when we talk about the planet, the world, I thought to myself, how do rockets get to the moon? Well, obviously there's a giant door up there somewhere they open, and then they can go out that way. I never, that's the way that our minds thought. You kind of make up this world within your head. And I think that with the paranormal and with ghosts and the like, I think children are more susceptible because they don't have those filters that we have in place. Right. Once you go to school, you start to get taught stuff. And if you go to Sunday school or whatever, you got all these filters that are being put in place. And those filters act, I think, as a kind of a block. And I think when you get older, you become open-minded because that child kind of mind is still with you, and you want to learn things. You want to learn more. You want to look at different things, and you kind of choose the road of exploration, or you choose the road to just carry on and not question. Just it's all a load of. I mean, how many times have you had conversations with people where you think they have an interest in maybe the paranormal, and you start to tell them or relay them a story, which can sound quite outlandish. For example, I give you a story. My girlfriend lives in a house she's experienced very, very bizarre paranormal experiences. So where one night she was woken from a sleep, and there's a teenage boy in her bedroom, and it's clearly where did this person come from? And it jumps at her and it vanishes. that when you relay that to someone, if I didn't know her for many years, and she told me that, I'd think, yeah, that's kind of like a bit made up. But that happens, and people do experience that. And are we experiencing that externally, or are we experiencing it internally? Very much like the UFO topics, where people say, "Oh, I was abducted by aliens. I saw me and my mate Jake. We saw an alien, and it abducted us." Okay, so you saw an alien. Now, the first question is, did you see an alien, or did you see it was it internally produced? Did you kind of project it on yourselves?
Well, that's where witnesses come in, though, right, Reeves? If it's multiple people involved, then it's a whole different deal. Then it has to be external at that point.
Yeah, I think that I think with the as I say, I had a UFO experience when I was a teenager with my friend and my dad, and we saw 3 lights in the sky which made a triangle, and then they stayed there for about 15 minutes, and then they all kind of went their separate ways, and the one at the top just shot up in the sky and it was gone, and there was no sound. It was a summer night, the completely clear sky. They were much brighter than the surrounding stars, and you could clearly see that whatever they were, they had the propulsion and they had intent. And I think that when you see something like that, it kind of flicks a switch in your head to learn. I mean, I went out, watched all of R.C. Clarke. I'm going by the magazines. I wanted to learn.
It sucks you into it. Yeah. Well, let me go back to a little bit what you mentioned earlier, Reeves. You mentioned Ouija boards and
Ouija boards,
spirit communication. Tom, have you had any experience with the Ouija board or attempting to communicate with discarnate entities?
Not a whole lot. I've actually got a Ouija board. Like, I keep meaning to do some kind of experiment with it. Someone bought me a Ouija board, but apart from when we were kids, I think all kids end up messing around with something like that. But I can't remember anything particularly supernatural happening. Especially when you're kids, it's always just you always just suspect someone else of pushing the planchette around. Apart from the experiments I've done, I don't think I've ever properly played around with a Ouija board or anything like that. There was the what was it called? I did a video recently where I tried there was a talking board thing, but that was supposedly more of a way of communicating with your subconscious, I think, rather than actually talking to spirits. So that was how it was marketed. It wasn't like a spirit board as much as a way of getting in touch with your inner self. But I don't know, maybe they all work the same way, I'm not sure.
Well, that's one of the big controversial topics in regard to Ouija boards, right? When you are using them, are you speaking to something externally, or is it just your subconscious? Even though your hands are on the planchette and consciously you're saying, no, I'm not pushing, but unconsciously maybe you are, right?
It's like micro movements of your muscles. But at the same time, if your subconscious is the thing that detects spirit activity more than your conscious mind, if it's affecting your subconscious, and even if you are moving the thing yourself and moving the answers, that doesn't mean it's not picking up something from a spirit realm or messages from something like that. It's
good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know.
How about you, Reeves? Have you fooled around with the board?
No. I was invited to many years ago. A friend of mine who I used to experiment with the EVP with him. He got his hands on a Ouija board and offered me to come and play Ouija board at a party, and I declined to go because I just really bottled it. I didn't have the but here's the thing. There was him and 4 other people, and they treated it as a party thing. They all got together, lit some candles. They'd had a few drinks, so they had a bit of courage, and they sat round and they had the planchette and they were asking questions and they were getting answers. They were allegedly, getting fragmented words and yeses and nos. And that was it. They just said, we don't want to play this no more. Just throw it all back in the box. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, for about 3 months afterwards, each one of them were plagued with bad luck.
Oh, wow.
One of them had an accident on his bike. Another one lost their job. Another one split up with a relationship, kind of fell apart. Now, I've read that one of the worst things you can do, allegedly, when you open up a line of communication with the netherworld, is you should always close that line of communication with the netherworld before you're done. So you say, we're ending now, blah blah blah, and you say a little prayer or whatever,
goodbye.
or say goodbye, and then you close the board and respectfully put it away. But obviously he didn't do that. He just we're bored, let's chuck it in the box. And
so
they all had
they didn't do anything. They just put it in the box and put it away, and that was that.
That was it. And for about 3 months afterwards, each one of them had I would say at least one major upset in their lives, which wasn't foreseen. It just happened. And I think that when we do look at Ouija boards, and yes, there are people out there that say, well, it's a Ouija board, it's a toy, it was made for entertainment, it was sold as entertainment, in the Victorian days, it was a parlor trick. Okay, yes, fair enough. But people say, well, it's micro movements, as Tom said, through the muscles, and you are kind of subconsciously moving it to where you want as a group. All right, so maybe that because a group of people are together and they've all got their fingers on the planchette, maybe they're being influenced. They're acting as a and something is influencing them to do what they're doing, but they're not being influenced in a way that they're being like possessed by whatever. They're being influenced in a very subtle way through very mild energy or whatever to move it in a certain way. I mean, I'm just speculating, but
for sure.
You have to look at this from all angles, because there are cases where people have found missing people through the use of Ouija boards. They found people have been murdered through Ouija boards. They found information that's relevant and it can be checked up through Ouija boards. So it's not like it's all a load of like made up stuff and fragmented words that Dave's got 7 legs and stuff. It's all there stuff that they can check up.
A good way of putting it. I remember somebody told me this. It's like when you use a board, it's like opening the front door of your house and leaving it open all night, and somebody could just walk in, right? But that person that walks in could be a great, wonderful, good person, or an axe wielding psychopath. Right? You don't know what you're going to get. And the same thing with the board is when you use it, you're basically opening the door, and you can get good and bad that comes through you're spinning the wheel. Place your bets, right? You don't know who or what's gonna seep in and say hello.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't just let any random person just walk into your house and sit down, without checking who they were first.
Yeah,
that's kind of what you're doing when you play with things like that.
Totally.
I think it's like scribing or anything like that. I mean, I was, as Gareth knows and our listeners know to the Paratalk, I was heavily into EVP many years ago. I was really into it, and I tried for quite a long time to get decent EVPs and just really achieve something. And I did. One day I did, and it absolutely scared me, because what I was hearing was Class A EVPs, which is literally like someone in the room, and they're giving me a response to my questions. And for months afterwards, I didn't do any further research, because it really did shock me.
So, Tom, have you ever tried EVP, and if so, did you get anything?
Not much. I used to really be interested in it when I was younger, and I don't know. There's something about audio that just, I don't know whether it just gives me the creeps more than even like a photograph of a ghost, the sound of a voice. But I've tried to like capture things. I've never really captured anything too interesting. A lot of the time when I capture stuff, I never know whether it's just random movements, like the movement of like, if I like shifted in my seat and the sound of like my clothes rustling, you amplify that to a maximum level, it kind of can sound like a voice. It's never been anything like you say, like a Class A, the sound of a voice speaking clearly. I've never captured anything like that, but I did have a strong interest in it, but never, not much luck really.
The only one that I really did that really worked, and it was done completely unintentional, was when I was a kid. I must have been like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 years old, and I was at a friend's house, and we had a cassette recorder, and we were playing around with the cassette recorder, just goofing around, saying stupid stuff, and then we'd do our little skits, and we'd kid around, and then we'd play the tape back and hit the play, and you could hear us, doing our thing, but in the background, very clearly, there was a man's voice, a gruff voice, and the words he said has been burned into my head. I'll remember them till the day I die, and I still don't know how these words got on this tape. And my friend, who's also with me, we still remember this incident. And it was a man's voice, a deep voice like this, and it went like this. It said, "This is Abu talking. I tower over you."
Yeah, I remember that.
Scary.
Abu. Yeah.
This is Abu talking. I tower over you, and it scared the living shit out of us, because we were like, well, where did that voice come? It's just us. Where did the voice come from? And from that moment on, I've been very reluctant to do EVP for real. I mean, I've played around a little bit, and a little bit here and there, and not got anything. But to do it like for real, I haven't done it since then.
I bought a because obviously back in the day, as some people might know, I worked in the music industry for 13 years as a sound engineer, and I was fortunate enough to have access to a lot of very nice equipment. That's back in the analog days, early digital, because we had digital audio tape, so DAT players. But I was quite fortunate to have all this at my, I could use it all. And that's what I did my recording on. And I worked for a duplication plant that produced cassettes, so I could have as many cassettes as I wanted. And of every cassette, a fresh recording was a fresh cassette on virgin tape. So there's no chance of any bleed through for past recordings. And I think that when I did, everything was analog back then, and when I did capture those voices, it scared me. And maybe about 5-6 years ago, I bought a digital recorder, and I decided I'm reasonable, a Zoom, like an H1, to do some home recording. And many times I switched it on, asked a few questions, and I thought, well, what I'm going to do, because obviously a digital recorder gives you much more recording time than a 90-minute cassette. I thought I'd just leave it on all night. I live in a Victorian mansion, which is built in the 18th century.
Victorian mansion, yes.
My bedroom is
a
converted,
marvelous, yes.
Downstairs, honestly, my bedroom is a downstairs quarters where the servants would enter into the lower parts of the mansion. The mansion now is split in half, and it's now apartments, so I live in a portion of it. But the whole point of what I'm getting to, I know I'm going the long way around here, but I like to tell a story. And the thing is, right, I put that recorder in my bedroom in the old part where I sleep, because I had feelings when I first started 5 years ago when I moved in here. I had feelings that there was someone or something in the room. You get that feeling that someone else is in there.
Totally.
Over by the window, which would originally been a doorway. So many people would have gone in and out of that area. And, that's my bedroom. And I left the recorder on every time. Just before I went to sleep, I'd wake up and switch it off, because I was so scared of switching it on in the morning and something. And I bottled it. And to this day, I just haven't done it, and I really want to do it, but
we did a few weeks ago, Tom. We did a show on EVPs on Paratalk. We live streamed it, and one of the things I said back then is, for people who think it's all nonsense, you can go and try it. You can pick up a digital recorder and give it a shot, and sooner or later you're going to get results. It might it might take weeks, it might take months, but sooner or later you're going to get something. But I always said, be very careful where you do it. You don't want to do it in your home, because if you were to do it in your house and you were to get a Class A response, that's not a good feeling.
Well,
that doesn't sound good.
Denzi in the chat asked me what scared me so much, and it was two responses really. We recorded for just over 4 minutes, and around the 2-minute mark, there was the way that we recorded is we used a a white noise generator, a signal generator with just white noise, and that was pumped into a cassette deck, either a TIAC or a Nakamichi tape deck, and then we'd have a microphone where we would ask the question, which imprinted our voice onto the tape, and then we would disconnect the microphone. So the only input going into the tape deck was from the signal generator, which was generating white noise, and it was just for background noise, so that whatever the theory goes that, ghosts can imprint on stuff, and if there's background noise, they can imprint on it better. But anyway, that's just so we recording it, and we listen, and to do a long story short, there was a static pop, and the first question I asked was is anybody there? Very corny, but is anybody there? And we hear a static pop, and we hear a gentleman's voice, very well spoken, I would say, maybe like an olden day voice, says yes. Okay, so and that's like somebody with a microphone talking. You can hear it on the tape. Yes,
classic,
and then
clear.
maybe classic, yeah, and then maybe about 20 seconds, something like that later, there's another static click, and I hear a lady's voice, and she says, "Please reply." And me and my friend were like, switch it off. I don't want to do any more of this right now. Let's just go home.
No, I can see how that would be terrifying, dude.
Yeah. After that, we did this work. Okay. After that, this is a little story. I'm going to go off on a tangent, but it's a really good story.
Right,
after that, to do night shifts, and my friend who did it with me, a couple of months later, I got a phone call at 10 o'clock at night, and he said, "I've closed up the unit. I'm going home." And we're like, "Well, why? Because we need to get this work done. We were very busy." And he said, No, there's someone walking around up here on the mezzanine floor when I'm in the duplication room. I can hear them. Someone's playing tricks. I don't like it. I'm going home." So anyway, he went home.
Yeah.
In the morning, he had to explain to the bosses why he'd shut up. He said he didn't feel well or whatever, but he went home. I did a night shift there, and I had the door open in the same room, and the light. Remember, there's a big warehouse outside, and it's all that's on is emergency lights. I'm in the room, and I've got the lights on. I've got a small portable telly that's on, Minders on or whatever, and I'm doing the duplication, and there's a shaft of light from one of the emergency lights outside shining through the door into the room. So there's like a very bright area, and for a moment that light is broken, as if someone had walked past on the mezzanine floor. And I know that there was no one in that building, because we locked the building and we alarmed the building. So we're kind of cocooned in the building.
Yeah.
And then also another member of staff, we had these printing units, these pots that held ink to print on the cassettes. Those pots, they were cleaned every night. We came in the morning, and those pots were in the bottom of one of the ink tubs, and the ink tub top was sealed. That they've been moved. So yeah, there was some weird stuff. That maybe we disturbed something, but that kind of scared me. And then I realized that I'm going to leave it alone for a while,
That's a great story, Reeves. I think we should.
He also says, "Have you still got the recordings?"
Oh yeah. Do you still have them?
Have you still got them?
I have looked, and I've moved many times since then. This was back in the early 90s.
Back in the 90s.
They were back in the 90s, not the 80s.
Yeah, back in the 90s, isn't it?
And they were on audio cassette, and I've literally got hundreds and hundreds of audio cassettes, and I've looked, and I can't locate them. I might still have them, and if I do,
you'd have to go through the whole. It would take hours, right, to go through all that stuff.
I have still got a tape deck, but it would take a while. But if I ever do find them, I will digitize them and upload them all to here.
Very cool. So I was going to say that we should start wrapping it up, because temperature is rising back here. It's getting very hot. I know that for you guys that it's nighttime, and if it's nighttime where you are, turn out the lights. Sit close. No, but it's getting dark where you are. Here it's middle afternoon. It's only it's 1:15 in the afternoon, and in my man cave here, the temperature is rising. So, and before it gets so much like I'm living on the sun, we should start wrapping it up. So let's go to the chat and see if there are any questions and or comments from the people in the chat room. Let's see what we got here. Percy Pineda says hello. What's up, Percy? Glad you could join it. Hey, man, how's it going? What else we got here? Multi-Love is saying, really interesting. Multi-Love is enjoying the conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. Let's see what else we got. Any other good ones? Sourpuss. I think that's your brother, right, Tom?
Yeah,
So
I think.
Saup was saying he remembers seeing Mr. Nanny featuring Hulk Hogan. And I guess that's at the movie theater, at the cinema where
Yeah,
the
yeah,
serial killer worked.
uh-huh.
He
Yeah,
remembers
because
that.
they used to show old like movies that had been out for a couple of years, but they were always kids' movies, which
Uh-huh.
also made it slightly sinister because it was.
That's true. Only kids movies, right? Right.
Yeah,
Let's see. Let's see who else we got on here. You got Florida Trailblazer, Mr. Joe Dunn. He posts in here. He says, "As a child, I remember certain experiences, but looking back, you wonder if it was dreams or imagination." That's true. Can you tell the difference? There are certain experiences that I've had that I know really happened. There's no real. I'm like, well, did I imagine that? I mean, some things, yeah, I'm on the fence that whether I imagine it, but then there's other things where there's like, no, there's no ambiguity. That really, really happened. How about you guys?
Well, I don't know. I mean, anything I experienced when I was a child, I don't question it, but I also look at it as a point of, well, I had an imagination back then, and maybe some of it was my imagination, but I definitely think that some of it was some form of experience. But as to what, who knows?
Yeah. How about you, Tom?
I think. Well, I can remember as a child thinking that I could fly for a little bit because I must have dreamt that I could fly, and then thinking it was reality. So there definitely is a bit of crossover between your dreams and reality when you're a kid. But I think when you remember things in quite mundane locations, like the things I remember in my house, I don't really remember having dreams about things in my house. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
walking down the corridor and stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't.
I know what you mean. Let's hang on. There we go. So, are there any other questions from the chat? There's like 25 people in there. Any questions, guys, before we wrap this up? Before I burst into flames live on air? And start, like a vampire, coughing, being ripped open at midday. I guess not. Well, let's wrap it up then. Tom, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today.
Okay.
I've
Thanks for having
thoroughly
me on.
enjoyed it. It's great to finally put a face to Shrouded Hand.
Yeah.
Tell
Official
everyone
face reveal.
exactly. Tell everyone where they can go to watch your very scary and disturbing videos.
Oh well, just search on YouTube Shrouded Hand. Don't search on Google because I've been hidden from Google search results. You'll find my videos on Google, but it's only playlists that other people have created of my videos. Like any links to my channel have been scrubbed from Google. So go on YouTube and type in Shrouded Hand. You'll be able to find me.
Yes, it's great.
If you want.
No, absolutely. I think people should absolutely seek out your channel because it is a fabulous one, and the videos on there are, like I said earlier, you might look at the title and go, do I really want to watch that? Oh my God! But you will, you will want to see it. It's great stuff.
I think Lee Napper wants Tom to say his signature line.
Oh yeah, you have to do it, Tom. If you don't, I will.
Well, I've heard you two doing. I've heard Gareth doing the line anyway.
Shrouded Hand
do
here.
you know how messed up? I've started saying this shit in real life, dude. I've come home and I'm walking in and I'm like, Shrouded Hand here. It's the greatest. It's
very catchy.
It is. It's very catchy. Just the whole.
It's very catchy.
Shrouded Hand here. It's amazing. So let's hear the real guy, the originator, the real person say it. It's all yours, Tom. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Shrouded Hand here.
Wow. That's awesome. That's
I didn't intend that to be my catchphase.
Oh, it's great, man.
It's just how I start my videos.
Oh, I love it.
Good.
Absolutely love it. I've been biting my tongue the whole show not to say it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I told him. I said, don't you say it, Gareth. Don't you say it.
It's great. It's great. Shrouded Hand here. That could be a T-shirt, man. Shrouded Hand here. It's wonderful, wonderful. All right, and guys.
He said it earlier whilst he was taking a pee.
He said, "Oh, there you go." Yeah, it's very, very catchy, man. It's very catchy. So before we go, Tom, are there any videos that are coming up that we can keep an eye out for? Something you might be working on that might be coming out in the next couple of weeks?
No, I never plan my videos in advance. I just come up with an idea on Monday, and then I don't know. I haven't really got too much of an idea for what I'm going to do next. I'm really bad at planning ahead, so a lot of people ask me what I'm going to do on my next video, and I honestly never know. So
So it's a mystery.
Well,
it'll be a mystery. Yeah.
I think that we'll definitely try and get you on another stream, or at least get you on an episode of the Paratalk
The
podcast.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Oh,
You'd
it's
have-
fun. I like this.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting episode.
It would be fabulous.
We'll be definitely staying in touch with Tom. So yes,
Absolutely.
All
Tom,
right.
once again, thank you so much. Been an absolute pleasure. Wonderful to talk to you and put a face to the voice. And
Okay, yeah, it's
keep up
been fun.
keep up the good work, man. Your videos are fabulous, and we love watching them. Thank you so much.
Cool.
And
All
finally, to everyone watching, thank you so much for taking a look at the Paratalk podcast on Mindset Central. And please subscribe if you can. We'd love it to you to subscribe and like and hit the bell and all the other dopey shit that they keep telling you to do on these channels. So please do. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all again very soon. And until then, Shrouded Hand here.
oh yeah.
And goodbye. Thanks, guys.
Bye everyone.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.